All right, welcome in and thanks for joining. This is an original story from Hidden Revenge Family, and it took a turn you truly didn't see coming. Let's get into it.
I pulled into my parents' driveway in a government rental that still smelled like someone else's bad decisions. 8 years away, and somehow the mailbox was the same crooked angle like it had been too tired to stand up straight since I left. I sat there a second with both hands on the wheel, watching the lights from inside flicker across the front window. Voices carried out every time the door opened. Laughter, music, the kind of party sound you only get when people have money and zero shame about showing it. My phone buzzed with a normal welcome message from a number I didn't recognize. "Parking is tight. Use the street." That was Sabrina. Of course it was. I got out and looked down at myself. My dress uniform wasn't new. It was clean and pressed, but it had miles on it. The shoes were shined, but they weren't the kind of shiny you get from a department store. They were the kind of shiny you get from working with what you have. Because the Army teaches you two things fast: how to improvise and how to keep moving even when you'd rather not. I walked up to the front door and paused just long enough to hear my mother's voice, bright and excited. And then the board voted unanimously. Unanimously, Sabrina's laugh came right after. It was the same laugh she had in high school when she'd accidentally spill a drink on someone's dress and pretend it was adorable. A laugh with teeth. I rang the bell. My mom opened the door like she'd been practicing her reaction. She smiled wide and fast, then her eyes dropped to my uniform, and the smile tightened like a drawstring. "Audrey," she said, like she wasn't sure if she should hug me or salute me. I leaned in for a hug anyway. She hugged me back, but it was stiff, like she was worried my rank might rub off on her blouse. "Hi, Mom, come in." "Everyone's here," she said, and then softer like it was advice. "Try not to, make it about you." I blinked. Right, because after 8 years, I was really planning to sprint in here and hijack the shrimp cocktail. She didn't laugh. My dad appeared behind her with a drink in his hand, and the look of a man who thought emotions were a subscription service he'd canceled years ago. He looked me up and down like I was a used car he didn't trust. "So, you made it?" "Yeah," I said. "The Army hasn't lost me yet." He nodded once like that was an acceptable answer and stepped aside. The living room looked like a catalog spread. Neutral colors, clean lines, candles that had never met a match. A crowd of people in expensive outfits held glasses like accessories instead of containers. And in the center of it all was Sabrina. She wore a sleek white dress that probably cost more than my monthly base pay. Her hair was perfectly styled. Not one rebellious strand. She looked the way people look when they've never had to carry their own groceries. Her eyes locked on me, and her smile bloomed like she'd been waiting for her favorite punchline to walk in. "Well, look who crawled back from government camp," she called out loud enough to pull attention from half the room. "Audrey Vance, our family's very own. What are you now again? Military, something." I walked toward her steady. "Good to see you too, Sabrina." She stepped in close, kissed the air near my cheek, and whispered, "Did they issue you that uniform in 2010? Or did you just keep it because you love the vintage look?" I didn't flinch. "It's called serviceable. You should try it sometime." She pulled back and scanned my shoes. "And wow, those boots. I think my assistant has a pair like that. For rainy days." I glanced down at my shoes like I'd never noticed them before. "Tell your assistant they have great taste." Sabrina turned to the room, lifting her glass. "Everyone, this is my sister Audrey. She works somewhere in the military. Logistics, I think." A man in a navy blazer leaned forward, interested in the way people get interested in something exotic but not threatening. "Logistics, like trucks." Sabrina nodded like she'd done me a huge favor. "Yes, exactly. Lots of paperwork. Very important. Very organized." I stared at her. That's one way to describe it. My mom drifted over, eyes shining at Sabrina, like she was staring at a trophy. Sabrina just hit her 8th year with the firm she announced to anyone nearby. "She's a CFO now. Isn't that incredible?" my dad added. "She's going places," Sabrina beamed. "It's been a journey, but when you pick a real career path, it tends to work out." I heard that, loud and clear. So did the people around us. A couple of them laughed politely like it was cute sibling banter. I didn't give them the reaction they wanted. I'd spent years learning how to keep my face neutral when the stakes were high. This wasn't high stakes. This was just obnoxious. I nodded at Sabrina. "Congratulations." She tilted her head. "Thanks. And Audrey, I'm proud of you too. In your way. Serving the country. Even if the pay is basically starvation wages. She looked around again for validation. I mean, I don't even know how you survive. Do they pay you in rations? Someone chuckled. Another person said, "At least she gets benefits." Sabrina snapped her fingers like she'd made a point. Exactly, benefits. That's what you do when you can't cut it in the real world. You get benefits. I sipped the soda my mom had shoved into my hand, like she was afraid I'd contaminate the wine. It's funny, I said. I thought the real world included keeping people alive. Guess I missed the memo. Sabrina's smile twitched. Oh, don't be dramatic. You're not out there saving lives. You're not a doctor. You're not a firefighter. You're military. She said military like it was a costume, like I played soldier on weekends. My dad stepped closer, voice low. Your sister's just trying to have a nice night. I looked at him. I'm not the one making speeches about real careers. My mom leaned in tense. Audrey, honey, we're just saying, Sabrina built something. She stayed. She didn't run off. I stared at her for a second. There it was, the same old story. Sabrina stayed and became the golden child. I left and became the family inconvenience. I didn't run off, I said. I enlisted. My mom's eyes softened for half a second, then hardened again. Yes, but you could have done something stable, something normal. We worried about you. Sabrina slid her arm through my mom's like she was the one protecting her. Mom, don't stress. Audrey's home now. She can finally see what a real life looks like. She looked at me sweet as poison. Maybe you can learn a few things while you're here. I laughed once quiet. Sure. Lesson 1, never trust a compliment from someone holding a champagne flute. Sabrina's eyes narrowed, still sarcastic. That's cute. She pivoted and waved me over to a group near the kitchen island. Come on, you have to meet everyone. This is Jared. He's in private equity. This is Denise. She runs a medical tech startup. And this is Olivia. She's a therapist. Might be helpful. Olivia gave me a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Nice to meet you. Sabrina squeezed my elbow. Audrey's been away. So if she seems a little off, just be patient. I looked around at the faces, all attentive in that shallow way. They didn't know me. They didn't care to. I was just Sabrina's accessory for the night, the contrast piece. I set my cup down and met Sabrina's gaze. What exactly did you tell them I do? She shrugged. I told them you're in the army. They'll assume whatever they want. It's easier. I leaned in slightly. You mean it's easier for you? Sabrina's smile widened. Oh my God, Audrey, relax. It's not like your job is some big secret. I held that look a second longer than normal people would. Then I stepped back. That was the moment I realized something important. Sabrina didn't just look down on me. She liked it. She needed it. It was how she stayed tall. And if that was true, then she was going to keep pushing until she got the reaction she wanted. I wasn't going to give it to her. Right then, my satellite phone vibrated against my hip. Not my regular phone. The one I didn't talk about. The one I didn't pull out at family parties. I shifted my weight and stepped away from the crowd like I was just going to the bathroom. In the hallway, I checked the screen. A short encrypted message. No sender name. Just a string of characters that meant something to me and absolutely nothing to anyone else. My pulse didn't spike. It didn't need to. I'd trained myself not to react in public, even when the message mattered. I locked the screen, slid the phone back into my pocket, and walked back into the living room with the same calm face I'd been wearing all night. Sabrina caught my eye as I rejoined the group like she was watching for weakness. I gave her nothing, and I let her keep talking. Right there, have you ever walked into a room where your own family acted like your life didn't count unless it looked good on a resume? Tell me in the comments, what's the worst thing someone has said to you while pretending they were just joking? I kept my face neutral and let Sabrina finish her story about real success while my mind shifted gears. The encrypted message wasn't social, it wasn't optional. It was a routine alert from a monitoring protocol I had set up years ago for my own accounts. Most people don't monitor their personal finances like classified traffic. I do. When the party finally wound down and the last Tesla pulled out of the driveway, I told my parents I was staying at a hotel. My mom looked offended. You don't want to stay here, I met her eyes. I like doors that lock. She didn't get the joke. Back at the hotel, I set my laptop on the desk and connected through a secure network. I don't mix personal life and work systems. That's how people lose careers. But I do know how to structure layers of authentication, and I've never been careless with my own identity. The alert had flagged an unusual credit inquiry tied to my social security number. Not one, three. All within the past 4 months. I logged into my primary bank account first. Balance normal, checking normal. Then I opened my veteran savings account, the one I built slowly over 8 years. Hazard pay, deployment bonuses, money I didn't spend because there was nowhere to spend it. The screen didn't load right away. Then it did. Account status restricted. I read it twice. Restricted means one thing, a hold, a freeze, usually due to suspicious activity or a legal claim. I clicked into the details. Outstanding balance $247,000. My chest didn't tighten. My breathing didn't change. I've had worse numbers thrown at me in worse places. But I did sit back in the chair and stare at the screen. I don't owe anyone $247,000. The transaction history showed a business loan issued under my name to a limited liability company I didn't recognize at first glance. Then I did. SV Strategic Holdings, Sabrina Vance. I leaned back slowly and let out one quiet breath. She really thought I'd never check. The loan had been approved using my credit history, my service record, and a digital signature that looked almost perfect. Almost. Sabrina always was good at copying things. Handwriting, signatures, personalities. I pulled up the loan documentation and downloaded every page. The timestamp on the approval coincided with a week I was overseas. That helped. The guarantor section listed my name. The contact number was an old one I hadn't used in years. The email address was one I kept only for military correspondence. She had done her homework. Or she thought she had. I checked the company filings. Sabrina's startup had been bleeding money for the last year. Overhead too high. Revenue projections inflated. Investors restless. She needed liquidity. Fast. And she knew something else. She knew I wasn't around to watch my mail. She knew I wasn't sitting at home checking statements every Friday. She knew I trusted the system enough not to expect my own sister to commit federal fraud with my identity. I closed the laptop and stared at the hotel wall for a minute. Anger is useful, but only if you aim it. The next morning I drove back to my parents' house. No uniform this time, just jeans and a plain black shirt. I rang the bell. Sabrina opened it herself. She looked rested, polished, untouched by consequences. "Oh," she said, "you're back. I need to talk to you." She stepped aside casually. "Sure. About what?" "Did someone finally explain LinkedIn to you?" I walked into the kitchen. My parents were at the table. Coffee, newspaper, the usual morning script. My dad glanced up. "Everything okay?" I looked at Sabrina. "You tell me." She crossed her arms. "That sounds dramatic." I pulled out my phone and set it on the counter screen facing her. The loan document sat open. Her eyes flicked down for less than a second, then back up. She didn't panic. She didn't even blink. "That's weird," she said lightly. "What is it?" "It's a $250,000 business loan issued under my name." My mom frowned. "That can't be right." I didn't take my eyes off Sabrina. SV Strategic Holdings. Silence. Just a second too long. Then Sabrina laughed. "You're joking. I don't joke about federal documents." She leaned against the counter casual. "Okay, first of all, calm down. It's not like I stole anything. You used my identity." She rolled her eyes. "I used your credit. Big difference." My dad's paper lowered slowly. "Sabrina." She waved a hand. "It's temporary. The company needed leverage. Audrey has perfect credit, military background, stable income. It made the approval process easier." My mom looked confused. "But why wouldn't you just ask?" Sabrina's smile sharpened. "Because she would have said no." I nodded once. "Correct." She shrugged. "It's not like you needed the money. You're barely here. You don't even have a real life to fund." I stepped closer. "You forged my signature. It's digital," she shot back. "No one's going to jail over a DocuSign." That's when I almost smiled. "Actually," I said evenly, "they do." Sabrina's eyes narrowed. "Oh my God, are you seriously threatening me? I'm stating facts." She crossed her arms tighter. "You owe this family." There it was, for what I asked. For 8 years of stress. For mom crying every time the news mentioned overseas deployments. For dad pretending he wasn't worried. "You left. We stayed. We dealt with it." I stared at her. "So you committed fraud to bill me for your anxiety?" She scoffed. "Don't twist it. I invested in something bigger. When the company turns around, I'll pay it off. Your account will be fine. It's frozen. That's temporary. It's under investigation." Her confidence flickered just slightly. My dad stood up. "Sabrina, tell me you didn't." She cut him off. "Dad, please. This is how business works. I shook my head. No, this is how prison works. My mom looked between us pale. Audrey, don't be extreme. I turned to her. Extreme is putting a federal loan in someone else's name without consent. Sabrina's voice dropped. You're not going to the police. It wasn't a question. I looked at her long and steady. I haven't. Her shoulders relaxed a fraction. See, because you know this would destroy everything. I didn't respond. What she didn't know was that I had already copied every document, every timestamp, every IP log attached to the submission. She thought I was reacting emotionally. I wasn't, she smirked. You're not built for this world, Audrey. You think in rules, in codes, in lines. Business is flexible. I held her gaze. So am I. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. You wouldn't survive 1 week in my industry. I almost laughed. She had no idea what industry I was actually in. I don't need to survive your industry, I said. I just need to understand it. And I already did. That afternoon back at the hotel, I didn't call the police. Not yet. Instead, I opened the loan file again and traced the submission pathway. The IP address didn't come from her office. Too obvious. It routed through a secondary connection tied to a co-working space downtown. Smart, but not smart enough. She had masked the front end. She hadn't masked the back-end metadata embedded in the document headers. Most people don't know it's there. Most people don't look. I do. Buried in the file properties was an internal user tag, linked to a device name, SVCFO01. I leaned back in the chair and let a small humorless smile form. She really thought I'd never check. And she really thought I'd never understand the system she was playing in. She was wrong on both counts. I drove to my grandfather's house the next morning instead of going back to the hotel. It sat at the end of a quiet street, lined with old maple trees, the kind that dropped leaves like clockwork every fall. I learned how to ride a bike on that sidewalk. I learned how to change a tire in that driveway. My grandfather taught me both. He used to say, you don't have to stay close to home to belong to it. Apparently that memo never reached my parents. The house looked smaller than I remembered, same brick. Same sagging gutter over the garage. Same wooden porch swing that creaked no matter how much oil you used. I still had a key. When I stepped inside, the air smelled like dust and lemon cleaner. Someone had been there recently. Boxes were stacked near the living room wall. Not neatly, just staged. I walked toward them slowly. One box had my name written on it in my mother's handwriting. Another had office, Sabrina. I stared at that one a second longer. The front door opened behind me. I didn't turn around right away. My dad cleared his throat. We were going to call you. I faced them. Both of my parents stood just inside the doorway like they were entering a stranger's house. My mom folded her arms, defensive already. We thought it would be better to talk in person. I nodded once. Then talk. My dad looked at the boxes instead of at me. We've made a decision about the house. I kept my expression flat. Okay. My mom stepped forward. Sabrina's company is expanding. She needs a dedicated office space, something stable, something she owns. I glanced around the room. This house isn't hers. My mom inhaled sharply. It can be. There it was. I folded my hands loosely in front of me. Grandpa promised this house to me. My dad's jaw tightened. He said a lot of things. He put it in writing. Silence. My mom's eyes flicked toward my dad, then back to me. We updated the paperwork, she said carefully. I didn't move. When, a few months before he passed, my dad answered. That's interesting, I said. Because I was here 3 weeks before he died, and he told me to make sure I kept the house. My mom's voice sharpened. You were always his favorite. I let that sit. He respected discipline, I said. That's not favoritism. My dad sighed like he was exhausted. Audrey, you're never here. You don't have roots. You don't build anything in one place. Sabrina does. There it was. Roots. I looked at him carefully. So because I serve overseas, I don't belong to my own family. That's not what I said, he snapped. It's exactly what you said. My mom stepped in, voice firm. You chose a life that keeps you away. Sabrina chose a life that stays. That matters. I felt something tighten in my chest, but I kept my voice level. So I'm being penalized for serving? No, she shot back. You're being realistic. This house can't sit empty waiting for you to show up once a year. It wasn't empty, I said quietly. It was mine. The front door opened again. Sabrina walked in like she owned the place already. No knock, No hesitation, just confidence. "Oh, good," she said. "We're all here." She wore a fitted blazer and heels like she was touring a property she'd already bought. She scanned the room and smiled. "I've already spoken to a contractor. We can knock out that wall and open up the space. Natural light sells credibility." I stared at her. "You're not knocking down anything." She tilted her head. "It's happening." My dad spoke quickly. "The paperwork's been filed." I looked at him. "Show me." My mom hesitated. "It's complicated." "It's not complicated," I said. "It's a deed." Sabrina crossed her arms. "Why are you fighting this?" "You don't even live here. I don't have to live here for it to matter." She rolled her eyes. "You're sentimental." "That's cute." I stepped toward her. "You forged a loan in my name. Did you forge this too?" Her smile thinned. "Careful," my mom's face drained of color. "Audrey, don't accuse your sister of something like that." "Why not?" I asked calmly. "It's consistent." Sabrina's voice dropped. "The will was updated legally." "By who?" I asked. "By Grandpa." "When?" She didn't answer. Instead, she walked over to the fireplace and picked up a framed photo of me and Grandpa from my high school graduation. She looked at it like it was clutter. "You left," she said. "You don't get to claim what you abandoned." I felt the shift in the room. This wasn't about paperwork anymore. It was about narrative. "You think I abandoned him?" I asked. "You abandoned all of us," she shot back. "We stayed. We handled everything. Hospital visits, bills, paperwork. You showed up in uniform and left again." I took that hit without reacting. My mom looked at me with something close to resentment. "We needed you. I was deployed," I said evenly. Sabrina's voice went sharp. "Excuses." The sky outside darkened suddenly. Thunder rolled in the distance. Of course it did. My dad rubbed his forehead. "This isn't productive." "No," Sabrina said. "It's very productive." She walked to the stack of boxes with my name on them and shoved one toward the door. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Making it easier," she replied. She dragged the first box outside onto the porch. Rain started falling in thick drops, fast and heavy. I followed her out. She shoved the box down the steps and into the yard. Books spilled out, old notebooks, a folded flag from Grandpa's funeral. It hit the wet grass and darkened instantly. I walked down slowly. "Sabrina," my mom said weakly from the doorway. "Maybe we should—" "It's fine," Sabrina cut in. "She's used to rough conditions." She looked at me and smirked. "In the army, you're used to sleeping on the ground, right?" The rain soaked through my shirt in seconds. I bent down and picked up the folded flag first. Careful, drying it with my hands, even though that did nothing. Sabrina kicked another box over the edge of the porch. Photo albums slid into the mud. "You don't get to pretend you're the victim," she snapped. "You chose your life." I stood up slowly. "And you chose fraud," I said. She stepped closer. "Prove it." Behind her, my mother came down the steps with a trash bag. Not to stop Sabrina, to help. She bent down and started picking up old newspapers and broken frames, dropping them into the bag. "Mom," I said quietly. She didn't look at me. "It's just stuff," she said. "We can't keep everything." That hurt more than the rain. I watched her pick up Grandpa's old toolbox, the one he gave me when I enlisted. She hesitated for half a second, then dropped it into the bag. Something shifted inside me then. Not anger, clarity. Family isn't just blood, it's trust. And once that breaks, it doesn't matter how many holidays you share. I picked up the last of my things without saying another word. Sabrina stood there, arms crossed, satisfied. "You don't have roots here," she said. "You're always passing through." I looked at her steadily. "No," I said. "I just know when I'm not wanted." The rain kept falling, and I realized something simple. The line had been crossed. Not when she mocked me, not when she stole my identity, but when my own mother helped throw my grandfather's memory into the trash. I dried the folded flag that night in my hotel room and laid it flat across the desk before setting my alarm for the probate hearing. The rain had stopped by morning. The air felt clean in that fake way it does after a storm, like the mess underneath doesn't count anymore. I dressed in civilian clothes again. Dark slacks, plain jacket, no uniform. Today wasn't about ceremony, it was about paperwork. My attorney met me outside the county courthouse at 9:15 a.m., sharp. I hired her the night before. I don't walk into legal fights unprepared. "You ready?" she asked. "I've been ready since someone forged my name." She gave me a tight smile. "We'll focus on the will today." Inside, the hallway smelled like old carpet and cheap coffee. Sabrina was already there with my parents. She wore a navy suit and the kind of expression people use when they're pretending nothing is wrong. She didn't look surprised to see me. She looked annoyed. Didn't think you'd show, she said quietly as I passed. I don't miss important meetings, I replied. The hearing was delayed 20 minutes. Standard court schedule chaos. I stepped outside to take a call from my attorney's office. We needed one more certified copy of the earlier will. I walked toward my rental car parked across the street. That's when I heard sirens. Not one, several. They weren't passing by. They were coming toward me. I turned slowly. 2 patrol cars cut across traffic and blocked the front of my vehicle. Another pulled up behind it. Doors flew open. Driver stepped away from the vehicle. 3 officers, weapons drawn, not lowered, drawn. I raised both hands immediately. Slow, controlled, no sudden movements. Hands where we can see them. They are, I said evenly. Get on your knees. I scanned the scene in one clean sweep. Civilians on the sidewalk. A couple already holding up phones. Traffic stalled. Horns in the distance. I lowered myself to my knees on the asphalt. My heart rate stayed steady. Training takes over before emotion does. An officer approached from my left weapon, trained on my chest. We received a report that you're armed and threatening family members, he said. We were told you're suffering from severe PTSD and unstable. I almost laughed. Instead, I kept my voice calm. I'm unarmed. You can search the vehicle. We will. Keep your hands up. They're up. The asphalt was warm under my knees. I could feel eyes on me from every direction. I didn't have to guess who made the call. I tilted my head slightly and looked across the street. Sabrina stood near the courthouse steps, not panicked, not confused, watching. There it was, that same satisfied look she wore when she threw my boxes into the rain. An officer cuffed my wrists behind my back, tight. You have any weapons on you? No. Any in the vehicle? Number? Military background? Yes. What branch? Army? He hesitated. Rank? I paused just long enough. Major General. He didn't react. Most civilians don't know what that means immediately. They walked me to the hood of the car. Another officer opened the driver's door and began searching inside. Glove compartment, back seat, trunk, nothing. Of course nothing. The officer in front of me kept his weapon trained but lowered it slightly. You understand why we're being cautious, he said. Yes, I replied. Someone gave you a very specific description. He glanced at his partner. Caller stated you threatened to shoot up the hearing if you didn't get the house. I stared straight ahead. I did not. The officer leaned closer. She also said you've had violent episodes before. That one almost made me smile. Did she provide documentation? I asked. No. Did she provide evidence of a weapon? No. Then you're operating on a phone call. He didn't answer that. One of the officers returned from the car. Clear, no weapons. The tension shifted slightly. ID, the first officer said. My wallet is in my inside jacket pocket, left side. He reached carefully and pulled it out. Driver's license first. Then he noticed the other card. He pulled it free. His eyes scanned it once, then again. The posture change was immediate. He looked at me more carefully now, not as a suspect, as someone he had misread. He turned the card slightly so the other officer could see. I saw recognition cross his face. He stepped back. Remove the cuffs, he said quietly. What the younger officer asked. Remove them. The metal loosened around my wrists. I stood slowly as they handed my wallet back. The first officer straightened instinctively. Ma'am, he said. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The younger officer glanced at the ID again and swallowed. Across the street, Sabrina's smile faded. The first officer cleared his throat. We apologize for the inconvenience. Inconvenience, I repeated evenly. We respond to credible threats. Was it credible, I asked? He hesitated. No. A small crowd had gathered now, phones still up, some whispering. The officer turned to face the onlookers. Situation resolved. Please move along. Then he faced me again. If you'd like to file a false report complaint, we can assist. I held his gaze for a moment. I'll handle it, I said. He nodded once. And then almost reflexively, he stood a little straighter. So did the others. It wasn't a theatrical salute. It was instinct. Respect for rank. They stepped back, giving me space. I rolled my shoulders once to ease the tension and walked toward the courthouse steps. Sabrina was still standing there. Her expression had shifted from smug to calculating. That was dramatic, she said as I approached. I stopped a few feet away from her. You called them, I said. I was scared, she replied quickly. You've been acting unstable. I looked at her. Unstable would have been reacting. She crossed her arms. I had to protect the family from what? From you. I studied her face carefully. You tried to paint me as armed and dangerous. You are armed, she snapped. You're military, not today. Her eyes flicked briefly toward the officers who were now getting back into their vehicles. She had expected something different. She had expected panic, or arrest, or humiliation. Instead, she got public correction. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You just filed a false police report tied to a federal officer. Her jaw tightened. Prove it, I almost smiled. You're building quite a pattern. The courthouse doors opened behind us and my attorney stepped out. They're ready, she said. I looked at Sabrina one last time before walking inside. Next time you want to escalate, I said quietly, make sure you understand who you're escalating against. I didn't look back. But I didn't need to. The crack in her confidence was finally visible. I walked out of that courthouse knowing two things: the will was now officially under review, and Sabrina had just escalated beyond family drama. 3 days later, I was back on base. Different state, different world, controlled access gates. ID checks that actually mean something. No decorative candles, no champagne flutes. I prefer this environment. Rules are written down, consequences are real. I stepped into the secure briefing room at 700. My operations officer was already there with a stack of procurement summaries. We've got a new vendor packet coming through the final review, he said. Medical supply contract. Large volume, multi-year, from private firm, fast growth, aggressive expansion. CFO pushing hard. He slid the folder across the table. I didn't react when I saw the name. SV Strategic Holdings. Of course. I opened the packet slowly. Projected pharmaceutical supply chain, support for overseas bases, vaccines, emergency trauma kits, cold chain logistics support. Ambitious. The projected contract value was 8 figures. I flipped to the compliance section. Incomplete disclosures. 2 unresolved financial inquiries. 1 flagged identity-based loan attached to the CFO's personal network. Interesting. Who did preliminary screening, I asked. Procurement team flagged minor inconsistencies, but nothing disqualifying yet, my officer said. They're requesting final authorization from my unit, from me. I leaned back in my chair and closed the folder. Sabrina had no idea. She thought she was negotiating upward into rooms filled with generals who didn't know her name. She didn't know the person reviewing her documentation already knew how she operated. Schedule a deeper compliance audit, I said evenly. Yes, ma'am. And route all supplemental data through my office. He nodded and left. I sat alone for a moment and let the irony settle. She wanted to partner with generals. She just hadn't checked which general. That weekend, my parents invited me to dinner. I almost declined. Almost. But I've learned something about strategy. Sometimes you show up not because you're welcomed, but because you want to observe. The house smelled like garlic and overcooked pasta. My mom always cooks too long when she's nervous. Sabrina was already there when I arrived. She looked energized, confident, like someone who believed momentum was on her side. Oh, good, she said when she saw me. You made it. I was invited, I replied. We sat at the table like nothing had happened over the last week. My dad poured wine for everyone except me. He handed me water without asking. Old habits. Dinner started with small talk, weather, traffic, some story about a neighbor's new fence. Then Sabrina leaned back in her chair with that deliberate pause she uses before she drops something she thinks is impressive. So she said casually, big week coming up. My mom smiled. Tell her, Sabrina took a slow sip of wine. We're finalizing a major supply contract, Department of Defense level. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. Is that so, I asked? She nodded. It's competitive. High-level meetings. Strategic planning sessions. I've been on calls with senior military officials all week. I kept my expression neutral. That must be intense. It is, she said proudly, but it's where I belong. My dad leaned forward. This could change everything. It will, she corrected. She looked directly at me. Next week I'll officially be a partner to generals. She smiled sweetly. And you'll still be? What do you do again? Fix tanks. My mom winced slightly, not at the insult, at the tension. I set my fork down carefully. I don't fix tanks, I said calmly. Sabrina waved a hand. Whatever you do, it's not boardroom level. My dad chuckled awkwardly. Different paths, very different, Sabrina added. I built something scalable. She followed orders. I met her gaze evenly. You think that's all we do? She shrugged. You execute. I strategize. I almost laughed. Interesting distinction, I said. She leaned in slightly. The world runs on capital Audrey, not camouflage. There it was again, that assumption, that surface equals substance. My mom reached for the breadbasket like carbs could absorb tension. Sabrina wasn't done. When this contract closes, she said confidently, we'll be integrated directly into defense supply channels. I'll have regular access to decision makers at the highest level. I tilted my head slightly. High-level review panels, I asked. Yes, final compliance sign-off. She smiled. Exactly. I let a brief silence stretch between us. Then I picked up my glass of water and took a small sip. Congratulations, I said evenly. That's a significant step. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She expected pushback. She didn't get it. She leaned back again. It's funny, isn't it? I'll be sitting across from generals negotiating multi-million-dollar deals, and you'll still be earning government paychecks. My dad nodded approvingly. That's vision. I placed my glass down gently. Vision is good, I said. Sabrina smiled. But compliance is better. Her expression flickered. What does that mean? She asked. It means large federal contracts require extremely clean documentation, I replied casually. Financial disclosures, loan transparency, identity verification. She held my gaze. Our paperwork is solid. I hope so. She tilted her head. You sound very informed for someone who just follows orders. I shrugged slightly. I read, I said. The room felt tighter. My mom forced a laugh. Let's not turn dinner into business. Sabrina leaned forward again, eyes sharp now. You don't actually think you have any influence over something like this, do you? I smiled faintly. I think influence works in layers. She studied me. Are you implying something? No, I said calmly. I'm stating something. She held my gaze longer this time, trying to read me, trying to figure out if I was bluffing. I didn't blink. After a moment, she leaned back again. You always overestimate your position, she said. I picked up my fork again. And you always underestimate your exposure. Silence. My dad cleared his throat. Let's just enjoy dinner. I nodded slightly and resumed eating. Sabrina watched me carefully now. She wanted to win the conversation. She wanted me defensive. Instead, I gave her something else. Calm. After a few minutes, I set my napkin down. I should head back, I said. So soon, my mom asked. Early morning. Sabrina smiled thinly. Busy fixing tanks. I stood up, something like that. I walked toward the door, then paused and looked back at her. Good luck with the project, Sabrina. She lifted her glass confidently. Thank you, I held her eyes just long enough. I hope your file is clean. Then I walked out. And this time I didn't need rain to feel the shift in the air. I sent the invitation the next morning before I could overthink it. No long message. No emotional appeal. Just the date, time, base address. And a line that read, I'd like you to attend a formal ceremony at my installation. My mother replied first. What kind of ceremony? I answered, recognition event. Attendance requires government ID, Sabrina responded 10 minutes later. Recognition for what? Retirement. I stared at that one for a second before typing back. You'll see. She called me within the hour. So this is it, she said. They're giving you a little plaque and a handshake if that's what you think. She laughed lightly. Honestly, I'm glad. It's about time you transitioned into something stable. Stable, I repeated. You've done your service. 8 years is plenty. You don't need to prove anything. I let that hang. You're coming, I asked. Oh, absolutely, she said. I wouldn't miss the end of an era. The end of an era. Interesting phrasing. The day of the ceremony was clear and sharp. No clouds, no rain. Just bright sun reflecting off rows of parked vehicles outside the base perimeter. I arrived early as usual. Uniform pressed, medals aligned, shoes polished until they reflected light. There's something about wearing your uniform on your own installation. It fits differently, not because of fabric, because of ownership. At 900 sharp, my parents' SUV rolled up to the visitor checkpoint. Sabrina stepped out first. She wore a fitted blazer and heels. Again, like she was attending a networking event. My mother followed, clutching her purse like the gate might ask for it as collateral. My father walked stiffly, already irritated by the security protocols. I approached from inside the secured side of the gate. The guard saw me and straightened immediately. "Morning, ma'am, morning." Sabrina's eyes flicked between us. She didn't like that. The gate officer stepped forward politely. "Visitor IDs, please." My father handed over his license. My mother followed. Sabrina paused for half a second before presenting hers like she was inconvenienced. "What exactly is this ceremony?" she asked loudly. "Is it like a retirement brunch?" The guard didn't respond. He scanned the IDs and printed temporary badges. Visitors remain in designated escort areas unless otherwise cleared. Sabrina smiled thinly. "Of course. We wouldn't want to wander into sensitive territory." She looked at me deliberately. I ignored it. We began walking toward the administrative building. 2 junior officers passed us and nodded respectfully in my direction. "Ma'am," Sabrina noticed. Her expression tightened. So she said loudly enough for the officers to hear, "What exactly are we celebrating?" 8 years of filing reports. I didn't slow down. "Something like that?" She smirked and glanced at the guard, walking a few steps behind us. "You know," she said, "my company is about to sign a contract at this level. I'll be working with generals soon." The guard remained expressionless. "Congratulations," I said calmly. We reached the inner security checkpoint. Access beyond that point required clearance. The staff officer at the desk stood up when he saw me. "Ma'am, the auditorium is ready, thank you." He glanced at my family. "Visitor badges only allow access to the guest seating section." Sabrina looked at him. "We're with her." "Yes, ma'am," he replied politely. "Guest seating." She frowned slightly. "And she—" He didn't hesitate. "She has full command access." That landed. Sabrina forced a small laugh. "Command access? That sounds dramatic." "It's accurate," he said evenly. We moved forward toward the final gate separating general base access from restricted operations areas. The guard there stepped aside immediately when he saw me. "Good morning, ma'am." "Morning." He opened the secured barrier without me saying a word. My family stopped automatically. "Visitor area is to the right," the guard instructed them. Sabrina looked at me. "You're not coming with us." "No." She tilted her head. "Why not? I have preparations." "For what?" she pressed. I met her eyes. "For the ceremony." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You're acting like this is a promotion." I didn't answer. She laughed lightly and turned to my parents. "See, this is what I mean. Military culture. Everything's a performance." My father looked uncomfortable. My mother glanced between us. "Can't we just all sit together?" she asked. The guard answered for me. "Ma'am, she needs to report inside." Sabrina's jaw tightened. She stepped directly in front of me, just inside earshot of the nearby officers. "You really enjoy this, don't you?" she said quietly, "pretending you're important." I kept my posture relaxed. "I don't pretend." She looked around at the uniformed personnel moving with purpose. "You think wearing medals makes you powerful?" "No," I said calmly. "Authority makes me powerful." Her eyes flashed. "You're still the same girl who left because she couldn't compete here." I studied her for a second. "I didn't leave because I couldn't compete," I said. "I left because I had bigger arenas." The guard cleared his throat slightly. "Ma'am, we need to proceed." I nodded once. Then I looked at my parents. "You'll be escorted to the auditorium. It starts at 1,000. My mother attempted a smile. "We're proud of you." It sounded rehearsed. Sabrina crossed her arms again. "Don't worry," she said. "We'll clap politely." I stepped past her. The restricted gate opened again without delay. As I walked through, I didn't look back immediately, but I could feel it. The physical separation, metal barrier, clear boundary, authority on one side, guests on the other. Inside the secured corridor, officers moved quickly but respectfully around me. Ma'am, everything's set, ma'am." "Yes," I replied. The tone was different here, not mocking, not dismissive, operational. I adjusted the cuff on my sleeve as I walked toward the preparation room. Behind me through the glass partition, I could see my family being directed toward the guest waiting area. Sabrina tried to say something to the guard, gesturing toward the secured side. He shook his head once. No authorization. She stayed behind the line. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one outside the fence. I stepped fully into the restricted zone badge, scanned clearance confirmed. The door closed behind me with a soft mechanical click, and I kept walking forward. I adjusted my collar in the prep room and stepped out when the aide signaled it was time. The auditorium was already full. Rows of soldiers in dress uniforms stood in formation, perfect lines, shoulders squared, eyes forward. The air carried that familiar mix of starch polish and tension before something official begins. I walked along the side corridor toward the rear entrance of the stage area. From that angle, I could see the guest seating section. My parents sat in the third row. Sabrina was next to them, legs crossed, posture confident. She was leaning toward my mother, whispering something that made my mom give a small, uncomfortable smile. Even from a distance, I could read her lips. Probably a service award. Then she added something else quieter. Or a retirement plaque. My father nodded slightly like that explanation made sense. I felt nothing sharp, just awareness. The master of ceremonies stepped to the podium at exactly 1,000 hours. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. The entire auditorium stood. The colors were presented. The national anthem played. Voices filled the space strong and unified. Then everyone sat. The program began with routine acknowledgments, unit citations, operational updates, recognition of outgoing personnel. Sabrina shifted in her seat. This wasn't the format she expected. She leaned again toward my father. How long does this usually take? He shrugged. From my position backstage, I could see her checking her phone discreetly, probably updating someone about how ceremonial this all felt. Then the master of ceremonies stepped back from the podium. And now he said, "Please welcome General Marcus Thorne." The room shifted. Every soldier stood immediately. I stood too. General Marcus Thorne walked to the podium with measured steps, 4 stars on his shoulders, command presence without effort. Sabrina noticed the stars. Her posture changed slightly. General Thorne adjusted the microphone. "Please be seated." The soldiers moved in unison. He didn't open a folder right away. He scanned the room first. "We are not gathered here for a retirement," he began calmly. Sabrina froze mid-scroll on her phone. "We are not here for a routine service award." Silence settled across the room. "We are here to recognize a career that has remained intentionally invisible." I watched Sabrina slowly lower her phone. General Thorne continued. "For the past 8 years, a certain officer has operated within intelligence channels that require absolute discretion. No public commendations, no media acknowledgement, no social visibility." My mother glanced at my father. "This officer," he went on, "has led multinational coordination efforts across 3 combat zones, has disrupted hostile supply networks before they reached American personnel, has prevented classified threats from materializing on domestic soil." The room stayed silent. No whispers, no shifting, just listening. "In our line of work," General Thorne said, "some achievements cannot be broadcast. They cannot be posted online. They cannot be discussed at dinner tables." Sabrina's face was no longer relaxed. She leaned forward slightly. General Thorne finally opened the folder in front of him. "For 8 years, this officer has served as what many in this building refer to as the Ghost." A small ripple of recognition moved through the soldiers. I didn't move. Operational name classified. Missions classified. Impact undeniable. He looked up again. "Today that changes." You could feel the air compress. Sabrina's fingers tightened around her phone. My mother looked confused now. My father's posture stiffened. General Thorne's voice remained steady. "It is my privilege to formally recognize an officer whose leadership has shaped the intelligence capabilities of this command." He paused. "Long enough, Major General Audrey Vance." The silence was immediate and absolute. For half a second, it felt like the entire room stopped breathing. Then every soldier in the auditorium rose at once. The sound of boots hitting the floor in unison filled the space. Not chaotic, not surprised. Intentional, respectful. I stepped forward from the side entrance and onto the stage. Uniform crisp. Medals catching the light, movement controlled. I didn't look at my family first. I looked straight ahead. General Thorne stepped away from the podium and turned toward me. "Congratulations, Major General," he said clearly into the microphone. The words echoed through the auditorium. Major General, not logistics, not support staff, not military something. Major General. In the third row, Sabrina didn't stand at first. She was still sitting, frozen. My father rose slowly, eyes wide. My mother followed, one hand over her mouth. Sabrina stood a beat late. Her expression had drained of color. I could see it now, the recalculation, the scramble. General Thorne addressed the room again. "For years, Major General Vance has operated without public acknowledgement. That anonymity protected operations. Today we acknowledge her leadership." He turned toward me. "And the unit she commands. Commands. Present tense. Sabrina's eyes snapped back to the stage. The Master of Ceremonies read the official citation. Specific achievements remained redacted. But the scale was clear. Strategic Intelligence Integration. Multi-Theater Operational Command. Oversight of procurement vetting and compliance within classified supply chains. That last line hung in the air. Procurement vetting. Compliance. I didn't look towards the guest seating. I didn't need to. General Thorne stepped closer and pinned the updated insignia. The room remained silent except for the controlled movements of ceremony. Then he extended his hand. Well earned. Yes, sir. We shook once, firm, deliberate. He stepped back to the podium. Major General Vance will now address the command. I walked forward, each step measured. I adjusted the microphone, and finally I allowed myself one glance toward the guest section. My mother's face was pale. My father looked like he had just discovered gravity worked differently than he assumed. And Sabrina wasn't whispering anymore. She wasn't scrolling. She wasn't smiling. She was staring. Not at the medals, not at the rank, at the word command. Because in that moment, the hierarchy she had built in her mind collapsed quietly in front of her. I looked back at the soldiers in front of me. Then I began to speak. I let the silence hold for a second before I spoke. When you work in intelligence, I said into the microphone, you get used to not explaining yourself. My voice carried clean and steady across the auditorium. You get used to people misunderstanding what you do. You get used to people assuming your job is smaller than it is, because they can't see it. I didn't look at my family yet. You also learned something else, I continued. Documentation matters. Integrity matters. Clean records matter. That line landed differently. In the third row, Sabrina shifted in her seat. I could see her now. She had her phone up again. She was live streaming. Of course she was. Her smile was back, but thinner, calculated. She wanted her audience to see the ceremony. She probably captioned it something like, "My sister's retirement event at a base." I finished my remarks without theatrics. No emotional monologue. No revenge speech. I've served 8 years in silence, I said. Not because I had nothing to say, but because the mission required it. Today I stand here not just because of rank, but because every decision I made was documented, lawful, and accountable. I stepped back. General Thorne returned to the microphone. Thank you, Major General. He turned slightly toward the audience. There is one more matter to address. The air shifted again. This command is responsible for oversight of several strategic supply contracts within the Department of Defense. Sabrina's phone wobbled slightly. General Thorne continued calmly. We recently completed a preliminary compliance review of a new vendor seeking high-level integration into our pharmaceutical supply chain. Sabrina's hand tightened around her device. My father looked confused. My mother looked nervous. General Thorne scanned the guest section deliberately. I understand that a representative of that company is present today. He looked directly at Sabrina. Miss Sabrina Vance. Her name echoed across the speakers. The live stream phone slipped from her hand. It hit the floor with a sharp crack. The screen shattered. She didn't bend to pick it up. She just stared. Frozen, exactly like the title of this entire mess. My sister mocked my 8 years in the army. And now she froze at my promotion ceremony. General Thorne's voice remained even. I'm told you submitted the proposal personally. Sabrina swallowed. Yes, she managed. Ambitious plan, he said. She tried to recover. Thank you, General. We're confident in our projections. He nodded once. I'm sure you are. He paused just long enough. However, you may not have been informed of the final stage of the review process. Sabrina blinked. My parents slowly stood from their seats as if gravity had shifted under them. General Thorne gestured toward me. The final compliance authority for this procurement channel is Major General Audrey Vance. The words hit the room like a controlled detonation, not loud, but decisive. Sabrina's face drained completely. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. My mother's hand gripped my father's arm. My father looked at me like he was seeing a stranger for the first time. General Thorne continued. As part of the review, several financial irregularities surfaced. The auditorium was silent. Specifically, a personal identity-linked loan tied to the CFO's network. Sabrina's breathing visibly changed. That loan, he said, calmly triggered an expanded audit. She tried to speak. General, that's a misunderstanding. He held up a hand. This is neither the time nor the venue for debate. His tone wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Major General Vance recused herself from direct evaluation once the conflict of interest was identified. That detail mattered. I didn't use my rank to bury her. I followed protocol. The audit proceeded independently. Sabrina's eyes snapped toward me. For the first time, there was no sarcasm, no superiority, just fear. General Thorne finished cleanly. The proposal has been suspended pending further federal review. The word federal hung there, heavy. Sabrina finally found her voice. You can't do this, she said, but it sounded small. I met her gaze across the auditorium. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply stood there in full dress uniform. Medals aligned, posture steady. This wasn't personal anymore. It was procedural. My mother's knees visibly trembled. She looked at me, then at Sabrina, then back at me. Understanding dawned slowly. The daughter they dismissed as rootless. The daughter they called unstable. The daughter they treated like a guest in her own inheritance, was now the final authority over the largest contract their golden child had ever touched. My father's voice cracked slightly. Audrey, I didn't respond. General Thorne stepped back from the podium. Major General Vance has upheld the standards of this command with professionalism and restraint. Restraint. That word mattered too. Integrity is not optional in federal contracting, he concluded. Nor is accountability. The soldiers remained standing, not out of spectacle, out of respect. Sabrina still hadn't moved. Her shattered phone lay at her feet. She looked down at it slowly, then back at me, like she was trying to calculate a way out. There wasn't one, because this wasn't a sibling argument. This wasn't a dinner table insult. This was federal oversight. And she had left fingerprints everywhere. My mother finally whispered, "We didn't know." I looked at her from the stage. I know, not anger, not forgiveness, just fact. General Thorne extended his hand to me again, signaling the ceremony's close. The soldiers began a controlled applause, not loud, not chaotic, measured, professional. Sabrina didn't clap. She just stood there completely still, frozen. And for the first time in her life, she understood something simple. Power isn't loud, it doesn't brag over dinner, it doesn't need champagne. It waits, it documents, and when the moment comes, it speaks once. I didn't step down from the stage right away. I waited, because I knew what came next. 2 military police officers entered from the side aisle, moving with calm precision. Not rushed, not dramatic, just efficient. The auditorium noticed immediately. Conversations that had started in whispers stopped. General Thorne didn't look surprised. He nodded once toward the MPs. They approached the third row. Sabrina Vance, one of them, asked. Her voice cracked slightly. Yes, you need to come with us. For what she demanded, trying to recover that old sharp tone. The officer held out a folder. Federal investigation regarding procurement fraud, identity misuse, and falsified documentation connected to a Department of Defense contract submission. The words were clinical, precise. Sabrina looked at me like this was a misunderstanding I was supposed to fix. This is because of you, she said. I stepped down from the stage slowly and walked toward her. No, I replied evenly. This is because of you, the MP continued reading. Additional evidence includes unauthorized use of a federal officer's personal identification to secure a business loan currently under review for financial misconduct. My mother stood abruptly. There must be a mistake, she said. She's just ambitious. Ambition isn't illegal. Forgery is. Sabrina's hands trembled slightly as the officers guided her to stand. You can't arrest me here, she whispered harshly. This is a ceremony. The officer didn't blink. This is a federal installation. They turned her gently but firmly toward the aisle. My father finally stepped forward. Audrey, he said, voice breaking. Stop this. I looked at him. I didn't start it. He grabbed my arm. She's your sister. She forged my name. She was under pressure. She filed a false police report. My mother's composure shattered. She stepped in front of me. Please, she said, her voice collapsing. We can fix this privately. I held her gaze. There is no private option when federal funds are involved. Sabrina tried one last time. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. You have influence. You can make this go away. I shook my head once. In the army, I said calmly. Betrayal of your own team is the highest offense. My father's knees buckled slightly. And I once considered you my team. The words didn't come out loud. They came out steady. And that made them heavier. The MPS secured her hands. No spectacle, no violence, just consequence. She didn't fight. She just stared at me as they walked her down the aisle. The same aisle where soldiers stood at attention. The same aisle she had walked in confidently an hour earlier. Now she moved through it under escort. My mother sank down into her seat and began to cry quietly. My father stood frozen, staring straight ahead. The auditorium remained silent. Not judgmental, not celebratory, just aware. General Thorne stepped beside me. "You handled this correctly," he said quietly. "I followed protocol." I replied. He nodded. "That's the point." The MPS exited the building. The doors closed. And just like that, the noise in my head that had been building for weeks went quiet. Not because she was arrested, but because the truth was finally documented in the open. The ceremony concluded formally. Final remarks. Dismissal of formation. As the soldiers began to file out, each one passed in organized lines. And as they did, they saluted. Not exaggerated. Not theatrical. Professional. Hundreds of salutes. One after another. I returned each one. Outside, the sun was still high. My parents waited near the steps. My mother's eyes were red. "We were wrong," she said. "It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't eloquent. It was just late." My father looked smaller somehow. "We didn't understand," he added. I studied them carefully. "You didn't try to," I said. My mother reached for my hand. I let her hold it for a second. "I can't undo what's happened," she whispered. "No," I agreed. "You can't." There wasn't anger in my voice anymore, just distance. Weeks later, the investigation moved forward quickly. Digital signatures traced. IP logs confirmed. Financial inconsistencies documented. The loan tied directly to her device. The false police report linked to her phone. Patterns are powerful in courtrooms. Eventually, the will was reviewed again. The updated version had irregularities, handwriting inconsistencies, witness signatures that didn't align with timelines. The original document stood. The house was mine. I didn't celebrate when the keys were returned. I just unlocked the door and walked inside. The place still smelled faintly like dust and lemon cleaner. I stood in the living room where the boxes had once been pushed into the rain. Then I started making calls, not contractors to turn it into an office, not real estate agents. I contacted a veteran support organization instead. The house became a transitional retreat for injured service members. Short-term housing, quiet space, structured support programs. Nothing flashy, just useful. The porch swing got repaired. The gutters got fixed. The old toolbox stayed. Sometimes I visit and sit on that porch in uniform. Sometimes I come in jeans. The difference doesn't matter. Rank didn't fix my family. Rank didn't protect me from betrayal. Rank didn't guarantee loyalty, but it reflected something: consistency, discipline, accountability. Months after the ceremony, I walked across the parade field during a routine inspection. Thousands of soldiers stood in formation. As I passed, a wave of synchronized salutes followed. It wasn't about me, it was about what I represented. Integrity without performance, authority without noise, and finally peace without permission. My sister mocked my 8 years in the army. Then she froze at my promotion ceremony. But here's what I learned. Rank doesn't define who you are. Honor decides who's still standing when everything else falls apart. If you were in my position, would you have forgiven her or let the system run its course? Tell me what you think in the comments. And if you believe integrity still matters, subscribe. There are more stories about justice and resilience waiting. I stood on my grandfather's porch a few weeks after the ceremony, watching the sun drop behind the trees, and I realized something uncomfortable. The promotion wasn't the lesson. The betrayal was: people assume power is loud. They assume it comes with applause, headlines, titles, money, or the right last name on a door. I used to think that too, at least a little. Not because I needed applause, but because I thought results would eventually speak for themselves in every room. They don't. Sometimes the room doesn't understand the language you're speaking. Sabrina believed power meant visibility. Titles, CFO, investor calls, expensive dinners, being seen with the right people, saying the right buzzwords, controlling the narrative. And for a while that worked, until it didn't. What I learned is this: real power isn't loud. It's structural. It's knowing how systems actually function. It's understanding process, compliance, documentation, timing. It's the difference between looking influential and being the final signature on a decision. If you've ever been underestimated, you know what I'm talking about. People mistake silence for weakness. They mistake restraint for insecurity. They mistake discipline for lack of personality. They're wrong. Silence is often data collection. Restraint is often strategy. Discipline is leverage. When Sabrina mocked my 8 years in the army, she was reacting to what she could see. She saw a uniform. She saw government pay. She saw distance from home. In her mind, she measured value by visibility and income brackets. What she didn't see were the briefings at 0300, the coordination across continents, the fact that I had been reviewing supply chains and compliance documents long before she decided to gamble her company on one. She underestimated what she didn't understand. And that's lesson 1. Never underestimate someone who understands the system you're trying to game. If you're watching this and you feel like the quiet one in your family or workplace, listen carefully. Stop trying to compete in arenas built for noise. Build expertise instead. Noise fades, documentation doesn't. Which brings me to the second lesson. Document everything. I didn't win because I shouted louder. I didn't win because I humiliated her back. I didn't win because I exposed her at dinner. I won because I had records. When my account was frozen, I didn't scream. I downloaded the loan documents. I traced metadata. I reviewed timestamps. I gathered patterns. When she filed a false police report, I didn't explode emotionally. I let the responding officers document the encounter. Body cams record everything. When the procurement review surfaced inconsistencies, I recused myself properly. Conflict of interest declared. Audit continued independently. That matters. Because when things go legal, emotions don't carry weight. Paper trails do. If someone in your life is manipulating you financially, check your credit reports regularly, not when you suspect something. Before, if someone is gaslighting you, keep messages. Save emails, screenshot conversations. You're not being paranoid, you're being prepared. Most people who exploit others rely on one assumption that you won't look closely. Look closely. The third lesson is harder. Don't fight loud, fight correct. When someone betrays you, the instinct is to react fast, to confront, to escalate, to win the argument in the moment. But arguments are temporary, consequences are permanent. If I had called the police the first night I discovered the loan, the situation would have turned chaotic. Emotional, defensive, family war. Instead, I waited. Not out of weakness, out of positioning. I needed context. I needed full visibility. I needed the right moment. Revenge is impulsive. Justice is patient. There's a difference. Revenge wants the other person to hurt. Justice wants the system to work. I didn't need Sabrina to feel embarrassed. I needed the documentation to speak for itself. And when it did, I didn't have to say much. Here's something else people don't talk about. Betrayal clarifies your boundaries. Before all of this, I tolerated subtle disrespect. Jokes, comments, the real career remarks. I brushed them off. I told myself family tension was normal. It isn't. Respect isn't optional. If someone repeatedly minimizes your work, your values, your effort, that's not harmless teasing. That's erosion, and erosion adds up. When Sabrina crossed the legal line, it wasn't just about money. It was about the belief that I was safe to exploit. That belief dies when you enforce boundaries. Enforcing boundaries doesn't make you cruel. It makes you stable. You can love people and still refuse to let them damage you. You can stay calm and still be firm. You can let the system do its job without enjoying someone's downfall. I didn't celebrate her arrest. I didn't cheer. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt resolved. Because the truth had been placed on record. That's what power actually looks like. It doesn't scream across a dinner table. It signs once. It approves once. It denies once. And it moves on. There's one more thing I want to say. Especially if you're someone who feels overshadowed in your own family. Stop trying to prove your worth to people who only measure worth in ways that benefit them. If someone only respects money, they will never respect service. If someone only respects titles, they will never respect sacrifice. If someone only respects visibility, they will never understand integrity. Build your life around standards that don't shift with applause. Integrity scales, character scales, discipline scales. And when the moment comes, whether in a courtroom, a boardroom, or a parade field, those things hold. Not because you demand recognition, but because you earned authority. Betrayal doesn't define you, your response to it does. So here's my question for you. When someone underestimates you, do you react or do you prepare? Tell me honestly, because preparation is quiet. But it changes everything. I didn't grow up thinking my sister was the villain. That part matters. Sabrina wasn't born manipulative. She wasn't raised to commit fraud. She didn't wake up one morning and decide to betray me. She was raised to win, and I was raised to adjust. In every family, whether people admit it or not, roles form early. One child becomes the easy one becomes the smart one becomes the responsible one, and sometimes one becomes the problem. In my house, Sabrina was the golden child. She got the praise, the applause at school events, the framed certificates on the wall. When she won, it was expected. When she failed, it was temporary. I was the steady one, the independent one, the one who didn't need as much attention because I handled things. That sounds harmless. It isn't, because labels grow. When one child is consistently elevated, they don't just gain confidence. They gain immunity. They start believing the rules bend around them. They assume mistakes will be softened. They expect rescue. When one child is consistently overlooked, they don't just grow quiet, they grow self-reliant. They learn not to expect help. They learn to build alone. Neither dynamic is healthy. The golden child learns entitlement. The disappointment learns distance. I don't blame Sabrina for internalizing what she was taught. When you're told your entire life that you're exceptional, you stop checking your own behavior. You assume you deserve outcomes. You assume your intentions matter more than your actions. That's dangerous. Because the real world does not operate on family bias. It operates on consequence. When Sabrina forged my name, she didn't see it as theft. She saw it as borrowing from someone who owed the family. She saw herself as resourceful. She didn't expect the system to treat her like a criminal. She expected it to treat her like she'd always been treated at home, with understanding. That's the myth of the golden child. They believe they are special. The system believes in documentation. If you're watching this and you grew up as the child who was compared, minimized, or told to be more like your sibling, I need you to hear this clearly. Being overlooked is painful, but it forces growth. When you don't rely on applause, you build skill. When you don't expect rescue, you learn discipline. When you aren't handed validation, you create competence. That competence becomes your insulation. You don't crumble when criticism comes. You don't panic when pressure hits. You don't assume someone will clean up your mistakes. You handle it. That's why when everything fell apart, I didn't collapse. I adapted. Now let's talk about parents for a minute. If you're a parent, this is uncomfortable. I understand that. But favoritism, even subtle favoritism, shapes character in ways you don't see until it's too late. When you constantly praise one child for achievement and excuse their missteps, you train them to believe accountability is optional. When you constantly tell another child to be patient, to not cause conflict, to be the bigger person, you train them to swallow disrespect. Neither child wins in that setup. One becomes entitled. The other becomes emotionally isolated. My parents didn't intend to create imbalance. They thought they were encouraging success. They thought they were supporting ambition. But ambition without boundaries turns into exploitation, and patience without boundaries turns into resentment. Family love does not cancel the need for accountability. Blood does not override ethics. This is something a lot of people struggle to accept. We are taught that loyalty to family is unconditional. It isn't. Loyalty without accountability becomes permission. Permission for manipulation. Permission for emotional harm. Permission for financial exploitation. You can love someone and still hold them responsible. You can care about someone and still say no. You can be related to someone and still require respect. That doesn't make you cold. It makes you stable. For years, I tolerated Sabrina's comments, the jokes about my salary, the comments about real careers, the implication that I was less successful because I wasn't visible in the same circles. I told myself it didn't matter, but repeated dismissal erodes self-worth if you let it. It took her crossing a legal boundary for me to recognize that I had allowed smaller boundaries to be crossed for years. Don't wait for fraud to enforce your limits. If someone constantly minimizes you, correct it early, calmly, clearly. And if they don't adjust, reduce access. Access is a privilege, not a right. Here's another hard truth. Sometimes the golden child doesn't know who they are without praise. When Sabrina's image cracked, when her contract collapsed, when her confidence finally faltered, she didn't know how to function in that space. She wasn't built for accountability. That's not strength. That's fragility. Real confidence doesn't collapse under scrutiny, it holds. If your identity depends on constant validation, you will panic the moment someone questions you. If your identity depends on performance, you will break when you fail. If your identity depends on comparison, you will feel threatened by anyone who grows quietly. Build identity around character instead. Character survives scrutiny. Character survives failure. Character doesn't need an audience. After everything happened, people asked me if I hated my sister. I don't. Hate takes energy. What I feel is clarity. I understand now that family roles don't have to define adult behavior. You can outgrow the narrative assigned to you. You are not required to stay the failure just because someone else was labeled the success. And if you were the golden child growing up, hear this too. Check yourself. Ask hard questions. Do you take shortcuts because you assume you'll be forgiven? Do you dismiss people who chose different paths? Do you believe you deserve outcomes more than others? Humility isn't weakness, it's protection. The real world doesn't care about childhood labels. It cares about conduct. My sister believed she was untouchable because she had always been shielded. She learned otherwise, painfully. And maybe that lesson, however late, will serve her better than praise ever did. So here's my question for you. What role were you assigned growing up the golden child? The responsible one, the disappointment, and more importantly, are you still living inside that label? Because you don't have to. You can rewrite it, but only if you're honest about what it cost you. I was sitting alone in my grandfather's living room the first night the house officially became a veterans retreat, and it hit me how quiet everything felt. No applause, no formation, no microphones. Just the sound of the heater kicking on, and the floor settling the way old houses do. I had just come from a base inspection earlier that day. Thousands of soldiers in formation. Rows aligned perfectly, salutes sharp. My rank visible from a distance. But sitting there in that living room, none of that followed me inside. And that's when I understood something clearly. Rank can open doors. It can't build character. Rank can command a room. It can't command respect in your own home. Rank can elevate your position. It can't repair broken trust. There's a difference between authority and identity. Authority is assigned. Identity is earned. When I pinned on that second star, people treated me differently overnight. That's how systems work. Structure responds to hierarchy. But the real work that put those stars on my shoulders happened long before the ceremony. It happened when no one was watching. It happened when I chose documentation over retaliation. It happened when I refused to bend rules even when it would have been easier. It happened when I recused myself from my sister's contract instead of leveraging my position to destroy her. That's character. And character doesn't come with insignia. Sabrina had a title too. CFO corner office. Investor meetings. High-level calls. But when pressure hit, when scrutiny arrived, when documentation was examined, the title didn't shield her. Because titles don't erase misconduct. They amplify it. If you're building a career right now, hear this clearly. Don't build it on shortcuts. Shortcuts look efficient until someone audits them. Don't build it on image. Image collapses under evidence. Don't build it on comparison. Comparison keeps you reactive. Build it on clean decisions. Clean decisions scale. Clean decisions hold up in rooms you're not even in. When my sister said next week, I'll be partnering with generals, she believed proximity equaled power. It doesn't. Responsibility equals power. And responsibility is heavy. You can't fake it long term. There's something else rank can't give you. Peace. Peace doesn't come from winning. It comes from alignment. After everything happened, people expected me to feel victorious. I didn't. I felt steady. There's a difference. Victory is emotional. Steady is structural. Victory spikes. Steady sustains. When I walk through the veterans retreat now, I see service members adjusting to civilian life. Some are injured. Some are just disoriented. Some are rebuilding careers from scratch. They don't care about my rank. They care that the space is safe. They care that someone understands transition. They care that the paperwork is handled correctly, so they don't get buried in bureaucracy. That's real impact, not the speech, not the applause, the follow-through. If you're chasing a title right now, ask yourself why. Is it for recognition? Is it to prove something to someone? Is it to silence a voice in your head that says you're not enough? Because if that's the reason, the title won't fix it. It'll just temporarily distract you. I didn't join the army to prove my family wrong. I joined because I wanted structure, purpose, standards, and over time, those standards shaped me more than the uniform ever did. Discipline becomes reflex, integrity becomes non-negotiable, accountability becomes automatic. That's what carried me through betrayal. Not anger, not pride, training. And let's talk about forgiveness. People assume forgiveness means erasing consequences. It doesn't. Forgiveness means releasing control over someone else's outcome. I don't control what happens to Sabrina now. The legal system does. I don't control how my parents process their regret. They do. Forgiveness isn't pretending nothing happened. It's refusing to let bitterness dictate your future decisions. I can move forward without carrying resentment, but I won't rewrite history to make others comfortable. That's maturity, and maturity doesn't require a rank insignia either. Here's the hardest truth of all. You can achieve everything externally and still fail internally if you compromise who you are. Character is what remains when titles are stripped away. If tomorrow I lost my rank, I would still have discipline. If tomorrow I retired, I would still have standards. If tomorrow no one saluted me again, I would still know I handled the hardest situation of my life without cutting corners. That's security. External validation is temporary. Internal alignment is durable. When my sister mocked my 8 years in the army, she saw pay grades and distance. When she froze at my promotion ceremony, she saw rank. But what actually separated us wasn't the uniform. It was integrity. Integrity decides who stands when the spotlight moves. Integrity decides who survives scrutiny. Integrity decides who can sleep at night without replaying shortcuts. Rank doesn't define you. Money doesn't define you. Family expectations don't define you. Your decisions do. Every small decision, every time you choose documentation over drama, every time you choose standards over shortcuts, every time you choose accountability over ego. Those choices compound, quietly, until one day they speak for you. So here's what I'll leave you with. If everything you built was audited tomorrow, your finances, your emails, your promises, your conduct, would it hold? Not would it look good on social media. Would it hold under review? Because at the end of the day, when the room clears and the ceremony ends, when the applause fades and the house goes quiet, that's what matters. Rank doesn't define the person. Honor decides who's still standing when everything else falls away. And if you had to choose one to protect your image or your integrity, which one would you fight for?
Final note. This story is a work of fiction, but the valuable lessons we discuss are entirely real and continue to happen to many people every day. If this style isn't for you, that's perfectly okay. Please feel free to look for other content that better suits your needs.